where you scream to watch that, watch this, and I'll dive down through this hairy flesh.
Hi, and welcome to Watch This. I'm CJ Johnson. We've done about 35 shows so far. We're still finding our feet. At the very beginning of this whole thing, we decided that we were going to look at content. We were going to look at movies mostly, but also at television and web content, visual content, stuff that you can watch. Someone who knows a lot about this, who's got fingers in many pies across all the content realms, is Enzo Tedeschi. He's a true independent. He's a producer, director, writer. In fact, he does it all, and he's joined me on Watch This. One of the things he does is run his own company, DeadHouse Films. Hi, Enzo.
Hey, CJ, how you going?
Good. It's about time you came on Watch This, because you really exemplify, as I just said, the spirit of what we're trying to cover here, because
thank you.
You cover it all.
I do what I can.
Yeah. So tell us about your empire. Tell us about DeadHouse Films and what you do with it.
Oh, empire. That's so grandiose. I
It
like
is.
that.
It is. You've got a digital empire going on.
It's kind of, I just like making stuff, man. Like, you know, whether it's, like you say, writing or producing, or most recently, you know, starting to direct as well. It's just about telling good stories and having fun making stuff that is hopefully fun to watch.
Did the Tunnel kick it off? You tell us about your feature film, The Tunnel.
Yeah, my first project, my first feature-length drama project as a producer was The Tunnel. It was also my first as a writer, and with my co-writer and co-producer Julian Harvey, and we just decided that we needed to do something to put us on the map as filmmakers. So we concocted something that we knew we had the resource and the know-how to deliver on a very, very tiny little budget, and then set about working out how to raise that tiny little budget and how to make it. And it worked, in terms of that goal, worked completely exactly as designed, which it got us very, very noticed.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember at the time you sort of already were doing unique things with distribution.
No, that would have been the first thing, really, that sort of that kicked it off. So we crowdfunded that.
Yep.
By selling off pre-selling each frame of the film for $1.
Yeah.
And then decided that because we had asked the internet to finance the thing, that we didn't really feel right asking the internet to pay for it again to watch it. So we put it online for free using BitTorrent at the time.
Yeah.
And everybody told us we were absolutely mental for doing that, of course.
Yeah.
And fast forward about 3 years later, and everybody was making web series and giving them away for free. And it's like, well,
yeah.
So,
well, that's sort of been, to me, what has been the sort of identity of your work, is you always seem to be a little ahead of the curve. You are doing these things that other people are doing a little later, and you're still very much in that mode. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like you're in Australia, you're kind of a digital pioneer?
I do a little bit, because I'm often considering whether it's to my detriment or not.
Right, yeah.
So, but it's been good. I think when we did The Tunnel, it was way ahead of what people were thinking here in Australia. It was very difficult for a lot of people in the traditional industry at the time to understand. I think it's a lot more accepted now, and thanks to, you know, people like Mike Cowip at Screen Australia, who's always been a huge supporter of what I've been doing, and a lot of my colleagues. That space, that digital space, has absolutely exploded in Australia. I think at last count, I think 2016 or something, there was something like 3,500 episodes of digital stuff made. Like, that's mental. That is a huge output, and most of it's actually really great. So yeah, it's an interesting time.
And so your aesthetic tends towards sci-fi, horror, genre.
I like my dark stuff.
The dark stuff. Now, is that just your passion, or is that because that stuff sort of works well within the digital realms that you're working with?
Look, I think it's probably a little bit of both. But initially, it probably does come from my own personal tastes.
Yeah.
You know, and again, sometimes I wonder whether it's to my own detriment. You know, it seems to be particularly difficult to do that kind of stuff here in Australia, where overseas it seems to be a little bit more, I don't know if popular is the right word, or accepted or something, but I guess it's just another part of the fun of the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of sort of lineage, obviously you've got Roger Corman,
Yeah.
You know, who came along and did this with film. And I guess you've got Troma Studios. And now you've got whoever makes the Sharknado series, who seem to have found
Asylum.
themselves weirdly, are they called Asylum?
The Asylum, yeah.
Right, so you've got Asylum. So you've got this sort of lineage of these companies that just put out product, work hard, keep the budget in mind constantly, and understand genre.
And the audience in mind, I think,
Right.
is part of it as well. You know, the stuff that, because Asylum are very much, I think, the modern reincarnation of what Roger Corman was doing decades ago. But they're very, very audience-minded in terms of what's working at the moment, what are people looking for, what are people clamouring for, and just giving them more of that. And I think a lot of those films are very self-conscious. They know they're not necessarily brilliant films.
Yeah.
They know they're just there for just to have some fun, you know. And the people watching it are tuning in, knowing that that's you can't have a film about Abraham Lincoln as a zombie hunter or whatever, or vampire hunter or whatever it is, and just sort of really take that too seriously. I just don't think that that's possible.
Yeah. Well, I remember as a kid, not so much now, but as a kid and as a teenager in particular, I really loved seeking out and finding on television mainly films that obviously were modest in resources, obviously were low budget, and that used that to their advantage. I loved finding adventure films or sci-fi films from the 50s, especially the 50s, that looked kind of cheesy but went for it, you know?
But owned it.
Yeah, but owned it. And you could see the backdrop.
Agreed.
And you could tell that the actors weren't the A-list.
Yeah.
And I loved finding that stuff. And that stuff continues.
100% it does. 100% it does. But I think that because the resources needed to make a film, for lack of a better way of calling it these days, is so much more accessible. Digital content, you know, is so much cheaper to create in a lot of ways, or potentially so much cheaper to create, that those limitations, if you know how to embrace them properly, they become transparent. You can't see it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And of course, Jason Blum with Blumhouse is nailing it at the moment. He's tending to make films for between $1 and $5 million, and they all make at least 30 million, and some of them make $100 million. I mean, it's incredible what he's doing. And those films are incredibly modest, and they're not starring the A-listers, and they're usually shot in one room. And now James Wan, Australian James Wan, seems to have sort of become his resident director. I mean, it's incredible.
100%. If I could work out a way to replicate that here, I would be very, very happy. And I'm not even talking, I don't need my, hundreds of millions of dollars of box office. I can aim a lot more modestly than that. But if I can find a way to crack that recipe, and we might be on track at the moment, we never know, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, because it seems that your enterprise feels very much like, I mean, you're not precious about like, I'm the director. You're writing, you're directing, you're producing, you're all in it together.
I think a little bit, yeah. I think it depends on the project. I think that it's much like putting together a team or a crew for a film. Not every person is right for every project, So I think it's a really valuable skill to be able to have, to say, this is a great project, and I can help bring it to life as being, one cog in the machine, but I know where my place is in this, and to take, you see it all the time in Hollywood, where they'll take something that's very small and great and unique, and then go, we're going to give you an opportunity to do this on a grand scale, but we're going to come in and help you fix it. And like, well, if you're going to just, like, why do that? If you're going to do it, run with it. Don't try and fix it. And so I think that's a lot of what I'm doing at the moment, is finding people that are kind of ready to go, but just need a little bit of my help wherever that sits. And then that, so far it seems to be working anyway, early days.
Absolutely. Well, this brings us on to your latest project, Event Zero.
Racial violence has broken out across the country.
Have you seen the news? Hey, Aussies around the country are rising up. You, son, have started a revolution.
This isn't political, pal.
They wanted a race war.
So Event Zero started out as a web series.
Yeah, so again, with Julian, who I made The Tunnel with back in 2012.
Julian Harvey.
Julian Harvey, yep. We won a pitching competition for a web series to make it on like $100,000 or something. And we came up with this kind of premise about what if there was a false flag terrorist attack on Sydney, and used this multiple perspective kind of story. We just messed with it was the first web series we'd made. So we just kind of messed with it and played with the storytelling and the space, and what, you know, we felt like digital, we weren't limited to a broadcast slot or a you know, having it to be 90 minutes or whatever. So we just that did very well for us on the international web series festival circuit,
which we know a little bit about here because we've had Luke Eve on the show a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's been caning it with Low Life and High Life. And it's so interesting that you and Luke already, as young men, are kind of the grand old men of this stuff because you've been doing it for a few years.
Yeah, that's right. I was going to say it moves very quickly in this space, I'm noticing. But yeah, and Luke, I mean, I bumped into Luke at a few of those with my follow-up web series that we made, the sci-fi one.
So Event Zero is now a feature film that's getting released into cinemas that you have directed.
Yeah.
So this kind of actually is
kind of
revolutionary for you a little
full
bit.
circle. Yeah, absolutely. So we when the opportunity came to work with Roxaline in France and Black Pills as a platform, so they wanted to do something with Event Zero, so we kind of came around to a script that was essentially a reboot, I guess you'd call it, of what we did in 2012.
Which is incredible. That shows you, that is so emblematic of the pace of all of this, that you're already rebooting your own web series from 2012 into a feature film.
That a lot of people didn't even know about. Yeah, that's right. So we've recreated into a bit more of a traditional narrative, I guess you'd say, and it does act as a feature film, and in some parts of the world, like with Black Pills as a platform, they've kind of sliced it up and will be distributing it as a web series as well. So it's kind of both, which is really interesting. It's a particular writing challenge, that one, to make sure that from the ground up it works as both. You know, because I mean, it's worth mentioning that one of the reasons we went down that path is when we did make Event Zero the first time around with Movie Extra, it was a YouTube show, but then they also asked us to stick it all together so that they could put it on TV as a half-hour slot. And I'm like, okay,
assuming that's just you just
slap your fingers, So we did that, and then when we made Airlock a couple of years later, that was written as 3 half hours. But then when we did a deal here with Sci-Fi Channel in Australia to put it on air, they asked us to stitch it all together, which was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we can make that work. And then we got some interest from Studio Plus via Roxaline, our partners now, for an acquisition, but they wanted us to actually chop all the episodes in half because they wanted more shorter ones, which is a little bit more challenging, but we managed to make it work. So this time I'm like, I know where this is going. So we engineered it from the ground up to work as both, and you know, we were blessed with some great writers and some great cast, and we've managed to pull off something that now, yes, is hitting theatres on August 31, which is really exciting. Yeah,
so it's both a terrorism thriller, a sort of plague thriller, a city in crisis thriller, and also beyond that, a thriller that looks at racism in society and the way that the world is responding to the terrorist threat, unfortunately, through the prism of racism. So it's got mighty themes, but it's also, you know, very much a genre thriller as well. But the thing that struck me most about it, and I'm sure this is informed by all the work you've done in the web series and everything that you've just explained, but also perhaps your own taste, I don't know, is that this film is relentless. This film, unlike any film I've seen this year or perhaps ever, never drops the ball. It seems insistent on there being something happening constantly.
I think it's a little bit of everything that you've just said. That's the reason. I mean, I remember when I saw the first drafts of the scripts coming from Matt and Greta, the writers, and they were dense. You know, it was a dense 90 pages. And I'm like, it felt, in a sense, it was counterintuitive to what you would expect a feature film to be. But then the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about the context of the film, the more I thought, actually, if we embrace that, that'll be an asset. We make that a thing, rather, you know, so you get dropped in it right at the start, and it doesn't let up. And that's not something you can do all the time, obviously.
It's like a 90-minute climax.
Pretty much, which sounds great, but every time is like, well, you know, that's a little exhausting. So I think that was very, very much because of that. I think it was also informed on some level by the fact that there is a lot of shorter form content being consumed, and I think there is it's a point of difference. Putting that on a cinema screen makes people pay attention.
Yes.
You know,
I agree. I think it's like a quote unquote selling point of the film is, you know, I will be able to say people, you'll be seeing something different when you see this precisely because it chooses to keep the ball in the air the entire time.
Yeah.
It chooses to never have a breath, never just take a break. It's just always on.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, again, do something to set yourself apart, right?
Yeah, totally. And also, I mean, it's future-proofing in a way because if indeed everything is creating a smaller frame of attention in people, this film, there's no way you can get bored.
even in its shorter episodic version, it's relentless.
Right.
even in 10-minute chunks, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, the scope of the thing is massive, as you can see from the still behind us. You've got a city in crisis, you've got, you know, smoke, you've got helicopters and everything, but obviously you've had modest resources. Did you just allow yourselves as the writers to just go crazy and then say, we'll figure it out?
Pretty much.
Right.
That's how I tend to work as a writer, and it's how I tend to work with writers I work with, which is to go, we're going to be limited in resources, yes, but that shouldn't limit your imagination just yet. You know, you have some parameters, work within them, but don't limit yourself, because there will always be, I guess, put it crudely, there will always be a cheaper way of pulling something off.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but if you don't let your brain go there, then you're kind of potentially compromising the story. So unleash, do what you want. And that's why we end up with such a dense script.
Yeah.
It was like, just do whatever you want to do. And they were like, writing. I'm like, that's a lot. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, and then you work out whether you can work it out, or you work out whether it's unrealistic, and you go from there.
Yes, we can all go see Thor, the next Thor, and understand that they had $200 million and can do this.
Yeah.
But when you see it creatively based on less resources, it's more exciting to me. It's the same thing as that 15-year-old who was seeking out those films from the 50s, and to see how they get around it.
I think it forces you to have to be clever.
Yeah.
It forces you to have to think about how you best use and allocate what limited resources you have.
Yeah.
So.
And the other way that you've done on a more practical level is the way that you've used the city of Sydney and crowd scenes, you know, which is, I mean, outside of the CGI space, just the way that you've managed to manipulate crowds and locations and extras to give us the sense of what we're seeing behind us right now.
I think that a lot of praise has to go to my producer, Kathy Rikiki, on that one. I think I drove her a little bit mental.
I bet.
And my AD, who was like, you're going to do what? So, you know, but again, some clever kind of, clever location picking, and like, you know, I got my kids, my son's in the drama ensemble. I'm like, we need bodies. Do your friends want to come? And so, you know, the entire drama class came down, and sort of, that's why there's, if you look closely, there's a lot of young people in those crowds.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know, it's about trying to, I guess that some of that comes down into the spirit of the thing. Like, everybody believed in what we were doing, everybody loved what we were doing, everybody saw that we were pulling together something that was maybe punching a little bit above its weight, and you know, everyone came to the party.
Yeah. Well, it's so much fun, and I mean, to me, watching it, because it is so relentless and kinetic and it's so ambitious, I imagine that it was stressful for you, but I also imagine that it must have been kind of fun, because you were just, your challenges were incredible and you were tackling them on a daily basis.
Mate, I had the time of my life.
Did you?
Yeah, I don't know about anyone else, but I had the time of my life. No, no, I had the time of my life on set. I was blessed with some amazing cast that just made it a pleasure to come to work every day, no matter how stressful, no matter how far we fell behind schedule, trying to make it up. Everyone was total pros. And it was just a blast. I can't wait to do it again.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you, man. It's always fun.
You epitomise the spirit of what we're trying to do here. You're doing it very, very well.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching Watch This. I've been CJ Johnson. Take care, and make sure you see a movie in some format tonight, this weekend, whenever you can.